The first time I woke up to tire tracks cutting through my lawn like a scar, I told myself it was an accident. The sun was barely up, the grass still wet with dew, and there it was, two muddy lines curving straight toward my porch, stopping just inches from the flower bed my late father had planted with me years ago. I stood there barefoot, coffee going cold in my hand, feeling that quiet kind of anger that settles deep in your chest. I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning, or that a single can sitting on a hardware store shelf would eventually bring an entire neighborhood to a standstill. Living under an HOA was supposed to mean order, fairness, and shared respect. That's what the brochure said when I bought the house. But respect is a fragile thing when power gets involved, and our HOA president, Linda, treated rules like decorations, something to hang up when it made her look good and take down when it didn't. She had a large SUV, the kind that seemed designed to dominate space, and she parked it wherever she pleased. Driveways, curbs, fire lanes. And apparently, my lawn. The second time it happened, I confronted her. I walked across the street, trying to keep my voice calm, reminding myself that adults solve problems with words. She barely looked at me. She smiled, the tight, polite smile she used at meetings, and said, "It's just grass. The HOA covers landscaping anyway." Then she climbed into her SUV and drove off, leaving me standing there feeling smaller than I had any right to feel on my own property. Weeks passed. The tracks kept coming. Each time, the damage spread wider, the soil packed down hard, the grass turning yellow and thin. Neighbors noticed. Some shook their heads in sympathy. Others told me to let it go. "You don't want to get on her bad side," they warned, as if that side hadn't already found me. I filed complaints. I sent emails. I even printed out photos and brought them to the monthly HOA meeting. Linda listened, nodded, and promised to look into it, then moved on to discussing fence paint colors. What hurt most wasn't the lawn. It was the feeling that my voice didn't matter. That rules were weapons pointed in one direction only. My father used to say that dignity wasn't something people gave you, it was something you protected. Standing there one evening, staring at the ruined patch of grass as the sun went down, I realized I had been waiting for permission to defend what was mine. The idea didn't come to me all at once. It started as a tired thought, the kind you have when you're done being patient. I remembered a neighbor once joking about how expanding foam could stop anything in its tracks. I laughed it off at the time. That night, I didn't laugh. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the email from the HOA reminding residents about parking violations, and felt something click into place. I didn't want revenge. I wanted it to stop. I wanted my lawn back. And I wanted, just once, for Linda to experience the consequences she seemed so skilled at avoiding. The next morning, I went to the hardware store. I walked past the aisle slowly, my heart beating louder than it should have for such a small errand. When I picked up the can, it felt absurdly light, like it couldn't possibly hold the weight of what I was about to do. I told myself this was the last resort. I told myself it was symbolic. Mostly, I told myself that enough was enough. The night I acted, the street was quiet. No drama, no audience, just me, the damaged lawn, and the place where her tires always rolled through like they owned it. I worked quickly, carefully, and then I went inside and slept better than I had in weeks, not knowing how the morning would unfold. When I woke up, the sound carried through my open window before I even saw anything. Shouting, sharp, furious, disbelief-filled shouting. I stepped onto my porch and saw Linda standing frozen beside her SUV, staring at the hardened mess locking her tires in place. Neighbors were emerging from their homes, drawn by the noise like birds after a storm. For the first time, she looked small. She demanded answers. She threatened fines. She said words like, illegal, and harassment. I listened quietly. Then I said something I'd practiced in my head 100 times. "It's just grass," I reminded her. "And it's just a lawn." The police were called. Reports were made. The phone was removed. I paid for the cleanup without argument. What I didn't pay for was silence anymore. The very next HOA meeting was packed. People who never came showed up. They asked questions. They shared stories. Driveway damage, selective enforcement, intimidation. Linda tried to maintain control, but it slipped through her fingers like sand. By the end of the night, a vote was scheduled to review her position. She didn't look at me once. The grass took time to grow back. I reseeded it myself, kneeling in the dirt, feeling strangely peaceful. Neighbors stopped by to talk, not in whispers this time, but openly. Some thanked me, others just nodded, understanding without words. Linda stopped parking anywhere near my property. Eventually, she stepped down. The lawn is green now. Strong. You'd never know it had been scarred unless I told you. But I remember. I remember the quiet mornings, the frustration, the moment I decided my space was worth defending. Power doesn't always crumble with a shout. Sometimes it cracks with a small, unexpected act that reminds everyone watching that rules only work when they apply to all of us. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: standing up for yourself doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks awkward. Sometimes it costs you money. Sometimes it scares you. But dignity grows back, just like grass, when you finally stop letting people drive over it. The morning after the foam incident, the entire neighborhood felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. Curtains twitched. Phones buzzed. By noon, everyone knew. By evening, everyone had an opinion. What no one expected was how fast the tables would turn, or how loud silence becomes when someone used to power suddenly loses it. Linda didn't knock on my door. She sent a certified letter instead, thick with legal language and bold warnings. HOA violations, property damage, abuse of community standards. I read it slowly at my kitchen table, hands steady, heart calm in a way that surprised me. For months, I'd felt cornered. Now, oddly enough, I felt ready. I photographed every tire mark she'd ever left. I printed every unanswered email. I highlighted every rule she herself had ignored. I wasn't preparing for a fight anymore, I was preparing for the truth. Neighbors started stopping by in ones and twos, then in groups. At first, they spoke quietly, like they were afraid the walls might hear. Then the stories spilled out. Linda towing cars without notice. Threatening fines she couldn't legally enforce. Letting her friends break rules while others paid for it. My lawn had just been the most visible line she crossed. I realized then that the foam hadn't trapped her tires, it had exposed her. The emergency HOA meeting was announced with less than 24 hours notice, a move Linda had used many times before to keep attendance low. This time, it backfired. Folding chairs filled the room. People stood along the walls. Some even waited outside. When Linda took her seat at the front, her confidence was gone, replaced by tight shoulders and restless hands. She opened the meeting with rehearsed authority, but it cracked halfway through the first sentence. When it was my turn to speak, the room went quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just told the story, every ignored complaint, every tire track, every rule bent until it broke. I held up photos. I read dates. I quoted HOA bylaws she herself had signed. With every word, I felt something heavy lift off my chest. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about being seen. Others followed. One by one, neighbors stood up. Some were nervous. Some were angry. Some cried. Linda tried to interrupt, but the room wouldn't let her. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the narrative. By the end of the meeting, a formal investigation was voted through. Not narrowly, unanimously. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Linda avoided eye contact. Her SUV stayed perfectly within her driveway lines. Notices stopped appearing on doors. Emails went unanswered, not from us, but from her. When the investigation concluded, the findings were read aloud in a room full of people who had waited a long time for accountability. Misuse of authority, unequal enforcement, intimidation. She resigned that night. I went home afterward and stood on my lawn under the porch light. The grass had begun to take hold, fresh and green, stubborn in the way living things can be. I thought about how small it all started, just a car, just a patch of dirt, and how big it had become. Not because of foam, because of courage. Weeks later, a new HOA board was elected. Rules were rewritten. Transparency became more than a word on paper. People waved when they passed my house now, not with pity, but with respect. And sometimes, when I looked at the lawn, I smiled, not because of what I'd done, but because of what I'd finally stopped allowing. Power thrives on silence. It feeds on people believing it's easier to stay quiet than to stand firm. But all it takes is one moment, one decision, one unexpected act to remind everyone that boundaries matter. Mine certainly did, and every time I step onto that grass now, I remember that dignity, once reclaimed, is the hardest thing in the world to run over again.